welcome to the opening session of the Global Management Week, an international symposium promoted by IBS Americas. The Global Management Week will approach a new profile of companies, which is changing markets, the way of these companies and clients interact with each other, and transforming the way the current society produces and delivers value. Let's talk about networked companies, especially the platform-based networked companies. We start today with a wider discussion and effort to characterize these companies and understand how they rise and they are growing and dominating their markets of operation. Tomorrow, proceeding with our Management Week, we'll talk about the strategies of the networked companies. And regarding how the value is generated by these companies, we'll understand how they compete with each other and interact with the traditional companies. On Wednesdays, the third day of our event, we will discuss a key aspect of the networked companies, which is innovative capacity, the transformative and entrepreneur aspects. We will discuss how the networking companies receive resources and become constantly full in and outside its network, cause changes in the market. And in the last day, finishing our discussion, we'll talk about the future of the platform-based networked companies. We'll talk about the new trends of this market, in which sectors they currently act, and in which markets it's possible to expect the new networked companies. For this Management Week, we count with the participation of great specialists, professors and consultants that will give their opinion, helping us to comprehend better this subject, really important for the business world. Today, we are welcoming here in our studio Professor Ricardo Brito, Doctor in Administration by FEA USP, and Dean of the IBS Americas. Professor, thank you for your participation. We have here alive with us also Professor Luis Carnier, Professor of Getúlio Vargas Foundation in the area of strategy, and consultant of huge national and foreign companies. Thank you, Professor Carnier, for being here with us. We'll also count with the participation of guests from all over the world. First, I would like to introduce Professor Lauren Dick, Associate Professor of Administration of the University of La Verne in California, specifically in the Human Resources area. Professor Lauren is Professor of International Programs in the University of La Verne, programs offered by IBS Americas, and that attracts participants of all over the world. Thank you, Professor Lauren, for being here with us today. Our second international guest of this symposium is Professor Will Holt, Director of Pearson College of London. Thank you for your presence here with us, Professor. The Pearson College London is one of the supporting institutions of this event and offers, in partnership with IBS Americas, an international program for the ones who desire to comprehend better the evolution of the strategic thinking in the companies. Good evening, Professor Will. To finish our today's presentation, I also thank Professor Li Ping. Professor He is the director of the International Finance Center of the Beijing Normal University in China. Let's now open our discussion. I would like to give the word to Professor Ricardo, but just to keep in mind that in case you want to send your questions or give your contribution to this panel, you just need to send your message through YouTube chat or WhatsApp. Once we're going to have some minutes to answer these questions live by the end of the presentation. We will broadcast this panel until 11 a.m. in the New York time, and it will be followed by a Q&A session coordinated by Professor Brito. In case you wish to receive the certificate of attendance in this event, please do not forget to fill the attendance list by the end of the lecture. We will post the link in the YouTube chat within 1 hour. You just need to click on the link, fill the form, and evaluate the first day of this event. Now I'll give the word to Professor Ricardo Brito. Professor?
Well, good morning, good day. Hello, Julio. Hello, Professor Carnier. A warm welcome for our foreign guests, Professor Lauren Dick, Professor Will Holt, and Professor He Liping from China. It's a great pleasure to share this panel with you, professors. And of course, my thank you, a special thank you for you that are following us today in our live session here at the IBS Americas YouTube channel, okay? In today's session, we'll try to establish the outlines of this what we call networked companies, especially of those networked companies which operate based upon electronic platforms. And I open these remarks here with some figures for you. Uber today is worth $52 billion, almost twice the value of Toyota, which is the largest automobile industry in the world. Toyota is worth more or less $29 billion. I don't know if these numbers cause astonishment on you, if they cause surprise, but for me, in my understanding, these comparisons amazes me. Now let me give you some more examples. Airbnb is another mobile application that helps people that are seeking for accommodation. Let's put in these words. It's an app that it's now worth $25 billion, almost as much as the largest hotel chain in the world, which is the Marriott. Marriott, just for you to have an idea, Marriott chain with several brands now owns more than 1 million rooms over the world in their hotels. And the numbers of these companies cannot be just attributed to stock market speculation. For sure it doesn't. Microsoft paid $26 billion in cash for LinkedIn, cash on hands. And you know this game, Pokemon Go, don't you? In 30 days, just 30 days, Pokemon Go made $200 million in revenues. And there were almost 45 million downloads in the world. And Alibaba just announced a revenue of over $500 billion last year, rivaling with Walmart, the largest retail company in the world. And this was not the first case of an electronic platform-based networked company, which acronyms is ePlanet. This wasn't the first time in which an ePlanet created a mess for traditional business in the world. Waze, for instance, Waze annihilated traditional competitors as Garmin and TomTom, and was bought by Google a few years ago. Traditional media is continuously losing audience with an attention shift from newspapers, TV channels to social medias, especially Facebook, as you know. Facebook, which was founded only 12 years ago, 11 years ago, and now has more than 1.6 billion users, 1.6 billion. And a study made by the Center of Global Enterprise from New York. This study released last January this year. A study involving specialists from all over the world. They analyzed the main electronic platform-based companies, the major ePlanets in the world. And the criteria to choose the companies was the market cap. Only companies that are $1 billion worth or more in market cap participated in this study. According to this study, there were in the world 166 ePlanets, and you can see in this chart that I'm displaying on your screen right now, these companies spread a lot in Asia. Beyond that, they have a strong presence in North America, of course, mostly in the United States, while Europe fall behind with 27 companies in this ranking, and Latin America and Africa together have only 3 of these companies, for the reasons you may understand. This Center of Global Enterprise Studies analyzed the value of the companies by region. Take a look again, please. Take a look at the chart that I'm displaying right now for you. We can note that North American companies, their market value surpasses the sum of all their worldwide rivals. After all, of course, the information technology, the mobile communication, the mobile connectivity, these technological advances flourished in the United States. And from there, they have spread worldwide nowadays. These are there are authors that are putting the mobile connectivity as a great last step of human evolution, comparable to spoken language domain from 60,000 years ago, or even the written language, which is 6,000 years ago. The basis of all this revolution is the expansion of the cell phone numbers. We started from 700 million cell phone bases in the beginning of the millennium to 7 billion cell phones in 2015. But the mobile connectivity depends on cell phones connected to the internet. And this, in this sense, the leap was even more impressive. Please, again, observe the following chart I'm putting in your screen. In just 10 years, we moved from 300 million cell phones with broadband internet access in the year of 2007 to 3 billion smartphones in the year of 2016, characterizing it as a global phenomenon. Despite, of course, the fact that access is still very far from being universal. We know that, because we know that still millions of people are out of this and other markets. With the expansion of the mobile connectivity, a path was opened to the emergence of thousands of companies that utilize these new forms of communication. As a business tool, apart from, of course, Apple or this sector giant together with Google, among many other known by these publics, the existence of such companies brought to us a new reality. We are at the electronic platform-based networked companies era, the e-planets era nowadays. Such companies possess some characteristics that makes them so much superior to others that in practice they are subordinating traditional companies. But this discussion over ePlanet's competitive strategy will be doing at tomorrow's panel. Today, the subject is the central mechanics of these companies, understanding how they create new ways of exchanging information, sharing resources, and doing business. The numbers of this sector grow exponentially. There are 370,000 licensed developers only at Apple platform, launching a new company or solution every 10 minutes in the store. Today, we have about 3 million companies or solutions, 3 million available on the main app stores, apart from the typical business-to-business market solutions that are not available in the app stores. When closely observed, we note 4 major ePlanets profile. The most well-known are the ones of the transactional platform kind, like Uber or Airbnb or Google Search. But there are also the platform innovation ePlanets. They offer a technology or a product or a service that serves as a basis for other companies to develop themselves, to develop other technologies or even complementary services. As an example, we can name Microsoft or Intel or S&P. The third kind is a blend of transaction platform and innovation platform. These are called the integrated platforms. As an example, we have Apple's iOS, as you know, and Google's Android platform. And finally, we have a last type less well known by the public, which are the investment platforms, e-plans that act like holdings or as an investor in the platform, or even they do both. We can mention as an example of this last kind of platform the Japanese SoftBank or the American Priceline. Thereby, I try to summarize this market scenario, a new subject for all of us. And we have the privilege of counting today with foreign specialists here today with us for this discussion, starting with Professor Lauren Dick from the University of La Verde in California, as well as some of the other American professors with whom we have been talking to. A frequent concern mentioned is one about the e-planet's labor relations. And there are two different aspects of this worry. First, there is the e-planet's labor relations per se issue. Secondly, regarding to the general quality of the services provided by workers that operate in e-plans that keep a relatively weak relation with the companies for which they work for. Given that, Professor, I'd like to ask you a question. In your point of view, which are the pros and cons of this new labor relation format? Please, before, explain to us why the e-plans are also called the gig economy there in the United States, Professor.
Regarding the gig economy, I understand that the term gig actually came out of the musical genre in the 1920s. The jazz musicians referred to gig as getting some work, getting some part-time work. And how it's applied now in the workplace is what we're seeing is a lot of itinerant, meaning workers that are traveling from place to place in order to get their contingent work, their part-time jobs. So characteristics of it primarily are workers that are technology enabled, so they have access to the web, to various applications or platforms that an organization may be using. It's temporary in nature, and also usually there's no benefits provided because they're not employees, and so as a result they have to look for their own health or medical insurance. Well, there's, I think good and bad on both sides in terms of the employees or the workers rather, as they're not employees. It provides them a lot of flexibility. It provides them with some choice, and potentially this so-called elusive work-life balance, where employees can or workers rather can do work from home. They can alter their hours of work. They can start at different times and end at different times, because all the organization is concerned about primarily are the results. So there's that whole flexibility angle with respect to it. However, on the negative side for the employee, there's often minimum wages or salaries that are involved with that. There's no benefit. There's no security. And oftentimes very little predictability, because it's up to the employer to offer them the employment opportunity. So having that sense of security in employment and an income is somewhat lost. So it's very much potentially a trade-off. There's also potential for conflict if one has multiple jobs in this kind of a context, that they may conflict with one another, and then that may impact negatively their continued association with that organization. So flexibility on the one side, lower wages, and security, on the other side. Now, with respect to an employer also has the flexibility in the sense that they're able to schedule hours as they need based on peak loads, peak production, peak productivity, peak hours of service, highest customer demand for the services, and so forth. So this is really very much labor optimizing, if you will, for the point of view of the employer. However, they're getting on the other side potentially not a stable workforce, because they are itinerant and contingent and looking for better opportunities, which if they come along, they're going to move. So the quality has a potential of suffering. Also, there's been a lot of writing now with respect to concerns of legal issues, and just recently in Fast Company magazine, the prediction was that the gig economy is not going, it's going to fail, and they're going to run into trouble because I think the heading of the article was being sued to death. A lot of workers in this gig economy are challenging the employers and saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm not a contingent worker or an independent contractor, as they try to portray, but rather I'm dependent on this income. I don't have the control over my work, and as a result I should be treated as an employee and given the protections and the salary and the benefits that one would receive as an employee of the company. So that presents quite a daunting challenge for a lot of these new upstarts in the economy. In terms of prevalence of the gig economy, it's quite substantial. Some stuff I read suggests as much as 80% of businesses don't have employees, which indicates that those roles are being filled by freelancers, project-type people, independent contractors. So how this is going to play out is yet to be determined. I believe that getting the human equation right is much more complex, much more demanding than the technology solution. It seems comparatively easy to identify the latest software, enable workers to have the devices and the applications necessary, but it's a whole nother matter to get the workers engaged and taking ownership of the work and wanting to do an outstanding job and upskill themselves and train themselves so that they're prepared for this kind of work. And that relationship doesn't go away. It's still there. Only it's a matter of how it's formatted. Is that as an independent contractor or is that an employee? And through this gig economy, I think they're trying to lessen or avoid that relationship somewhat by having them identified as independent contractors as opposed to the company's employees.
Thank you, Professor Loren. Thank you very, very much, Professor Loren Dick, for your thoughts about it. I think that the e-plant managers aren't always, in fact, aware of the several impacts that their managerial decisions can have over the society as a whole and over the labor relations specifically. And this will be bringing a toll to be paid in the future by these companies. Now I would like to call for this discussion Professor Will Holt for this discussion. He is director of the Pearson Business School of London, to help us understand the social, economic, and technological origin of this social phenomena that are the electronic platform-based networked companies, the e-planets. Professor, good morning. How do you evaluate the rise of these new companies? And if it's possible, in a broader analysis, what do these companies have in common with each other?
So I think we need to start, first of all, with the technological evolution that's happened over the last 15, 20 years. And undoubtedly the advent of the internet and the IT infrastructure has enabled collaboration. Now, I think the key evolution across all of this was the improvements in mobile phone technologies. And if you see how that's had a transformation in everyday society, I don't have to tell you that when you go on public transport, where you're walking down the street, people are glued to their phones. And that's had a huge impact in terms of how we use technology, how we interact, how we share information. Now, if we take a step back, we go back to a time before the advent of the smartphone, when the iPhone was really just a novelty rather than a necessity or a consumer necessity, which it appears to have become along with its rivals. Then before that, you had the true innovators who saw this opportunity to create real scale, linking marketplaces with the customers in completely different ways. And I think we have to say that the pioneers of this, and Google is one. I mean, Google itself is an interesting story, just in terms of its development. The evolution of Google happened very, very quickly. And in terms of what followed from that, in terms of linking our consumers directly to suppliers as the middleman, you then saw from a retail perspective the advent of eBay and Amazon. And this, I think, really captured the imagination of an increasingly collaborative society, certainly in the Western world. And as the advent of social media came in, as we saw, first of all we had MySpace, and we had Facebook, which of course appealed to a much wider market. We started to see a change in how societies interact with each other. And again, it was Amazon and eBay that showed that actually we didn't have to follow the rules that previously had been followed. We started to see the emergence, and this I think is the most fascinating part of these platforms, the commoditization of everyday life. And all of a sudden you had Airbnb, you had eBay, which I think was really the catalyst for this commoditization, this creation of what we call now the sharing economy, where you could sell things that were previously just part of your everyday lives, but now you could add the value, and you could share your washing machine with your neighbours. There is an app in France that now allows you to do that. So I think it's called Mon Voisin, and that allows you to literally share your washing machine, a function or an asset that we all have and we all use on a day-to-day basis. And now that you can connect with your neighbours, then you can actually, from a market perspective, commoditize everyday items. So Airbnb is one example of this. Your bedroom now is an asset. Uber, of course, where in fact if you're a driver and if you have a card, then you can be an Uber driver. So I think that's the first step. This technological evolution that led to social. A much more socially collaborative environment than we ever had before. And then you need to think about the impact of that on a wider scale. And this is where true innovation has been born out, and particularly going back to the sharing economy model. A lot of this has come out of necessity. There's a very strong tech startup community in London. A lot of our students are looking to not go into employment as such, but actually to set up their own tech startups. A number of our students have done that. And again, it's based around this idea of developing platforms that can link the supplier, and I use supplier in a very loose sense, and we're all effectively suppliers now, with consumers. And what we're seeing more and more is a focus on connecting people in ways that haven't been managed before. So that's partly economic. If you look at the startup community of London, there's a lot of economic factors that have led to that. And again, globally, we've seen Silicon Valley. A lot of the most successful platforms originate from that part of the United States. But undoubtedly, the economic necessity for these platforms to emerge, particularly when faced with the 2007 global crisis and the fact that job opportunities were not perhaps what they once were, you did see this emergence of true innovation, and I do think quite strongly that necessity breeds innovation, and that has led to booming startup communities on both sides of the Atlantic. One of the things that the platforms rely on, particularly with this sharing economy model, is trust. If you think back 20 years, the idea of getting into a stranger's car and being driven to a different location was just inconceivable. The idea of staying in a stranger's bedroom had just never been thought of. And even now, we use these platforms, such as Uber, such as Airbnb, to take advantage of these opportunities. But at the same time, there is an element of trust. And what we've seen is that social media and the ability for someone to rate a service or an experience, and for others to very quickly view the opinions of others, enables suppliers, individual drivers, individual rooms or room providers to very quickly gain a reputation. And trust is key to this. And I do think another common characteristic of a lot of these platforms is that the regulators have not perhaps caught up with the services and some of the considerations that they provide. Only today we saw that Hungary had effectively legislated against the use of Uber in that country. So as of today, Uber has effectively suspended operations in Hungary as a result of changing legislation. And that's a very dynamic factor. We do see regulations coming in. Airbnb is not possible in every country around the world. So the other thing, going back to, I guess, whether technology has driven social change or vice versa, is this idea of power. And yes, individual customers have a voice, but also customers now have more choice than they've ever had before. Again, let's take a very simple example. You need to buy a pair of shoes. Well, before the advent of e-platforms, how would you buy shoes? You'd walk into a store, you would pick one of the options that was available to you. Now, how do you buy shoes? You go online, you select the colour, the brand, the type of shoelace, the particular style, it might be a particular supplier. You can specify to a very high level of detail exactly the product that you want. And it's now perfectly possible to locate that product and have it provided to you very, very quickly. The Amazon model now has emerged even further. So from a logistics point of view, it could be a matter of hours between clicking on a button to purchase your specific chosen product and it actually arriving on your doorstep ready for you to use. And I think here lies a real opportunity for a lot of industries. If we think slightly about the future, it's very interesting to think about industries where that's not the case, where you do still effectively have to walk into a shop and pick a particular service that's on offer, and thinking about how that will change. Professional services, for example, is one opportunity here. So just going back to the final question, in terms of what the platforms share and what they have in common, I guess one key necessity for the success of any platform is the ability to drive scale. And in terms of successful platforms, it's those who can actually attract scale and can grow on a macro basis who are really seeing the success. Alongside that, how do you facilitate scale? Well, it's partly about the user experience, and in my opinion, the most successful platforms are the simplest to use. If you look at Twitter, if you look at Uber, if you look at any of the platforms that we use now on an everyday basis, it's all about simplicity. And being able to productize that and being able to actually make that available to customers and also to suppliers is a huge competitive advantage. I think other common factors, again, we've talked about regulation and the issues around regulation, and particularly going back to the idea of scale. For any platform to be successful, and there are notable exceptions to this, such as Weibo in China, but generally you're talking about operating on a transnational level across national borders, and that brings in all sorts of regulatory and legal implications. So there's a lot of similarities in terms of the, I guess, the overall purpose of these platforms. Yes, their function may be very different. Some may be genuinely innovation-led. I mean, we've not yet talked about Apple, and Apple, I guess, are again one of the pioneers of the corporate-led e-platform model, just with their iOS system. And we've moved right through now to a situation where we have this informal economy, this sharing economy, where everything is essentially a product, and you can link someone in Uzbekistan with someone in Brazil, and the world has become a much smaller place. And I guess the last thing to say about this is future opportunities. And again, growing that level of scale presents future challenges. And we're now seeing the advent of the bots, of course. And bots are effectively web robots, to put it in very simple terms. So whereas before you may have interacted with a person on the other side of that platform, we're now dealing with artificial intelligence. And that must be the emerging trend and the continuing trend that carries on as there's an ever greater demand for scale.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Will Holt, for your participation. Many of those who are watching us today are or will be in the future managers of ePlanets. I'm sure of it. And I know that ideas like these you shared with us will be germinating inside their minds of all of them. Thank you, Professor Will. And now let's invite another colleague to help us to better understand this subject with a very different view. Professor He Liping from the Beijing Normal University. Professor, I'd like to ask you what provoked the emergence of these e-planets around the world. In your view, please, what is making these companies grow so much and dominate so many different markets, Professor?
I believe mostly it's because we now have a new generation who are growing up in the background that a lot of people are very much familiar and also affiliate with the new internet technology. They make themselves used to such the use of say online connections, and they believe that's the most easy way to make a life and to do everything. So I would say some firms are taking advantage of that new space from young generation. Then they see the huge opportunities. So they are, you say, they are try to make a profit from it, and I believe most of the demands already exist in the society, in the economy, but the way of people interacting now is different. It's something new, unprecedented, and but I believe in the market mostly still for younger generation, yeah. But with them, you would say, okay, the market can expand over time, and they may have some threat to all existing firms, like say the hotels. They may find some customers are shifting away, but for good ones, those with reputations, still I believe they cannot be substituted by those new entrants in the market. So they still have some advantages. They can still survive, and also those large older firms, if they realized there's a new way to do business, they could respond by expanding, also making change in the way of their marketing, in the way they are organize their customers, and so on. So we would just say some new interaction between firms and between business and the society, and well, we would say this is how economy and the society would become more dynamic than before. We say the society has been changing much due to the widespread of new technology and its use, and the platform became such important concept in the economy. Yeah, platform that's to make people to connect intimately and in an easy way, and also that is how make people feel so close to each other. The distance between them became shorter and shorter, just because we have technology, we have the new ways to connect the people together. I believe they are having the ideal of what we may call the social networking. Yeah. And so that's I think is the most important ideal. With that ideal, also they have technology to materialize that. That is, they create a special functioned website to make those people on two sides of the market to be together. Then also they have a kind of, you would say, a kind of in-house regulation or rules to force those trading transactions on the platform to be carried out in a fairly transparent way, and to make all participants to say they are not going to be cheated, and if they found something not right, they have somebody to work. I mean, to represent them to seek justice. I mean, to minimize the risk for participants in the platform. I think that is also important, particularly from a long-term point of view, because nobody wants its interest to be undermined in the platform.
Thank you, Professor Haley Pink. Thank you for your opinions. It really seems that the question of trusting the system, trusting the business partners based on electronic platforms is the key to success of many of these companies worldwide. Now I pass the word to Professor Luiz Carnier, our professor colleague at the Getúlio Vargas Foundation from Brazil. Professor, I know that your expertise is in business strategy, and we'll have tomorrow's day today dedicated to this theme. So I'd like to ask you to carry out a broader analysis now, an analysis over the context and the characteristics of these companies, leaving the discussion about their competitive strategy development for tomorrow. From your point of view, in building their competitive advantages, e-plans are creating some of new competitive tools and are also reusing old tactics, old tools. How do you evaluate them? How do you evaluate what they bring from the past to the current context, Professor?
Perfect. Okay. Well, hi everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. We know we live in the information society, as Peter Drucker defined it. I would add that we are, in fact, not the information society, but the knowledge society, right? Because the knowledge society is upgrade of information. Knowledge is created by having information. And this new society, the key word today for companies like ePlanet is speed. Speed is the key word for the success of any enterprise today in the ePlanet environment, I could say. You asked me what kind of strategy they are bringing from the traditional world, right?
Yes, probably they are creating new tools,
Sure.
new ways to approach markets,
Yeah.
to create a different positioning, but probably they are also reusing some tools. In your view, what is new and what is refurbishing?
Yeah. Okay. We could say that in the traditional market, what we have is physical products, physical companies, and the strategy is going that direction. Okay, we have people today. Of course, we have the products in the ePlanets, but what we can tell, what we can see that we bring from the traditional market is the same example of the clusters. You know, the clusters is a concept that you have, for example, the Silicon Valley we have in the United States, and we have a lot of clusters, even Brazil, developing products. And basically speaking, what we have in the cluster is a triangle of three bases. We have the companies, we have the government doing create infrastructure, giving all the incentives for taxes, exemption of taxes. And number three, we have what you call the academy, the research, the technical research. Take the example of clusters in the Silicon Valley, for example. Small companies working together, and those companies, they are exchange information and create value through the knowledge, because they exchange the knowledge. So they have that 3 points: government, the companies, and the research or the academy. So what they have that is an exchange of information, creating value. We have the same thing in the ePlanets, because we also call the ePlanets the network companies. That's the basic. So this network is generating knowledge. And I think it is something we can compare with the old, let's say not the old economy, but the old format that we used to have today. But in the comparison with this model and the model we have in the ePlanet, we have the speed, the necessity, the need of exchange information, exchange knowledge, and these companies, they are working together and created a new environment.
It's like they are creating instant clusters without the trouble of putting all people together, because they are connected through internet.
This is important, because when you have in the world today, in the traditional market, the clusters, you have the physical buildings and everything. Now we are virtual today. We are in the cloud. So all the companies in the ePlanet, they don't need a place. They are everywhere. It could be here and be the beach. It would be in China, as we saw today. We have some testimonial from the United States, from England, and from China. So that's what we're doing now. And you, for example, where you are now, we have people from Africa, people from South America, people from China, from Asia. That's the key essence of, and this is what I like most, because we is a word that is connected, exchange experience with the speed. Yeah. So the information is changing all the time because the speed create a new kind of knowledge which is being expired all the time, and we are generating new and new and new knowledge. That's what the key essence of ePlanet compared with the traditional market, for example.
So let's understand in this sense that we have instant clusters around the world because everybody's connected to the internet through their mobiles. And of course, our first move is to think of business to consumer kind of companies, B2C.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, we can think of B2B companies too, because companies are also spread out around the world, but they are all put together in the same cluster if they are connected through the internet. In your view, this new trend, these new ePlanets format of companies applies to both business to consumers and business to business companies, or you see more they are more suitable to a specific kind of company, Professor?
Well, this is a good remark because the first impression that everybody has that this kind of a e-planet business or concept is for B2C retail. No, it's not for every one-to-one market only. Especially think about what kind of services the e-planet can provide for in the B2B market
Mm-hmm.
for companies that really exist, or even the companies that are in the B2B market today, they can take advantage of ePlanet. So they can combine everything. Take, for example, we have a very good case of supermarkets. I think we can mention this. You have the Tesco group in Europe, in Asia, is a famous strategy they use,
Mm-hmm.
having those panels in the subway, for example, and you can use your smartphone, you scan the product, they have a QR code, and then you have the product in your palm top in your smartphone, and then you are buying in the subway, for example. This is a very good example of a company in the traditional market, in the traditional economy, using the ePlanet by using an app.
Mm-hmm.
And just for example, we have in Brazil a similar system, but not for a supermarket. This is what I'm calling you, that's very important, the ePlanet working with the B2B. What I have in Brazil is a little bit different. What I have here in the subway is a ePlanet company that you do the same process, scanning, QR code, but there's a lot of different supermarkets behind the system. And they locate the nearest place, the nearest supermarket of your house, and then deliver at your house by that supermarket. You can see this is a very good example because it's not only a B2B company that take advantage of ePlanet by creating their own system. No, they are hiring the service of a third party, which is ePlanet, because those supermarkets, they don't have experience. That's very important. They don't have experience. They don't have expertise.
It's not their business.
It's not their business, not their core business. Their core business is foodstuffs and the things, so beverage and everything, or logistic, if you wish to put it this way. But they're hiring the service, take advantage of someone. They have a very good, efficient process, an app created in the ePlanet, and they work together.
Mm-hmm.
So the ePlanet combines and works in the B2B and the B2C. So this is the most amazing part of the story.
In a blink of eyes, they have a totally new, brand new ecosystem in which consumers and also supermarkets, business are putting together their needs, their demands, their offers, and creating value to their partners.
Think about what's the advantage of the knowledge they created by working together.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same concept of Waze. You know, when you use the Waze, they're becoming more perfect, learning of your experience, and the same happened in this example. This is what I call the knowledge society today. The knowledge society is in the e-planet, and this is the future, or the future is today.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Very well, Professor, very well. Well, that being said, I will close this first part of this day thanking the participation of Professor Lauren Dick from the United States, from the University of Laverne, also from China, Professor Haley Pink, thank you very much, and Professor Will Holt from London, from Pearson Business College, London. And of course, thanking Professor Carnier from Getúlio Vargas Foundation for your participation here with us. Now we will have just 1 minute, it's a very short break. It's real quick, and then we will be back to our Q&A session, back to here. And here is my invite for you to join us tomorrow, the presentations over strategies of e-planets. I'd like to remind you one more time that the university that sponsors these events are offering scholarships for short-term business program abroad. To run for them, you have two options. You can send your questions here for this debate, your collaboration, your remarks, or you can participate in the managerial challenge, whose registration ends in this following Thursday. So you can form a group to discuss the challenge we propose to you, okay? See you in just 1 minute. Hi, we are back again live here in our IBS Americas YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us in this Q&A session, questions and answers session. I have several questions, I will try my best here with the help of Professor Carnier, who is still sitting by me here, to answer you all. But don't worry, if your question perhaps don't go live on air, it will be running the same way for the scholarships offered by our sponsoring institutions to the best collaborations in this debate, right? So keep sending your questions. We'll be doing our best to answer all of them. And the first question I have here comes from Mr. Ariful Islam from Australia. He's asking how all the TV channels are making live on your YouTube. Mr. Ariful, it's a difficult matter monetizing from e-planet's activities. Not only TV stations, but also newspapers and other magazines are having hard time to make money out of this new context. They are trying to be innovative in finding ways to make money out of it. I believe you know that many newspapers around the world are declining their numbers of subscriptions. Many TV stations are losing audience to social media like Facebook or LinkedIn or even YouTube. But I'm sure that the most proactive of them will find their way up in this new economy. Okay, thank you very much. I have here a question from Mr. Luke Fongang from Cameroon. Thank you very much for sending your question. What are the opportunities of this new global markets approach to developing countries, emerging countries? I believe, Mr. Luke, that emerging countries will make the most out of it, because this new economy is about sharing resources, sharing knowledge, sharing money, sharing attention to the new needs of this new market demands. So emerging countries, as they lack resource, sharing resources will be the key for developing themselves. Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to ask the opinion of Professor Luis Carnier, who is
Yeah.
sitting by me.
Yeah. This is a very tricky question because developing countries like Brazil, like your country, we have something very important which we call resilience. You know what I mean? Resilience. I'll give you a tip. You can write the name Vijay Govindarajan. Vijay Govindarajan. Go to YouTube, take a look at that, and write reverse innovation. Take a look at the concept of reverse innovation, because reverse innovation is related to innovate products in developed country and export the products and services, innovative products and service exported to the first country, to first world. I'll give a good example that we have in Brazil. Brazil is a producer, the largest producer of ethanol from sugarcane.
Mm-hmm.
Why we developed the sugarcane ethanol in Brazil? Because of the shortage of oil we have in Brazil. Yeah? Brazil is a large exporter of, for example, you go to the United States, the banking system, IT system in the United States are developed in Brazil. The AT, the automatic telling machines, for example. This is the example of a reverse innovation. But take for the concept of reverse innovation and put in the e-planet that Professor Brito mentioned, that your exchange of knowledge, exchange of information, and more important, you don't need too much money, too much investment, financial, to do that. So take a look at this reverse innovation. Vijay Govindarajan, this is an Indian name. He's a professor for Tuck University, and you're gonna like it. And then you tell me what your impression about that. Send your questions even later from our program that we can reply you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Luke from Cameroon. Thank you very much for sending your question. And now I have a question from Pakistan, Mr. Salman Ali. He asks, what could be the parallels between e-companies, e-planets, and the traditional companies? Well, you know that both of them are thriving nowadays to conquer your attention, to conquer new markets, to deliver value to the customers. But the point is that from our point of view, from what we have been discussing here, is that e-planets are using more efficiently their resources. They are reaching easily their clients.
Tied to market.
Yes, their time to market is much faster than the traditional companies, and it gives them a competitive advantage over traditional companies. Now I have, thank you, Mr. Salman Ali, for your question. Now I have a question, very interesting one, from Mr. Birhanu from Ethiopia. Thank you very much for joining us. What is the method the company will use to introduce in this new context, like training, opening the company, etc.? Mr. Birhamu, it's a very interesting question. We'll be addressing these innovational pathways on this Wednesday discussion. I invite you to join us, and we'll be back to this subject. But just to give you a short view, it's really possible, and it's a real necessity that traditional companies evolve into e-plants within the next few years, because it's not just a matter of having rivals using these new technologies, but your clients, your suppliers will be in this new economy. Everybody in the world is start using cell phones, connected these cell phones to internet. It's easier to access your clients through this way. Thank you very much, Ms. Birhanu, for sending your question. Mr. Hassan Javed from Pakistan, how can IT innovation help in making of ePlanet more effective? We are surprised, we are amazed by all these technologies, but from my perspective, Ms. Hassan, we are just starting this new game. Augmented reality, other ways to use internet as wearable tools, even the Internet of the Things, all these technologies are just giving their first baby steps. I believe within the next 5 or 10 years, we will be experiencing a totally new, different world in terms of technology. And of course, this technology will be used by companies to improve their relations with their clients. Thank you very much, Mr. Hansen. I have here another question from Ms. Agatha Maritapu from Cook Islands. What will be the major problems happening in the business? What are the issues or solutions? Well, in my view, Ms. Agatha, the most traditional companies, those conservative mindsets will be bringing to some traditional companies a real issue. Companies that are used to just have a face-to-face contact with their clients, considering not only the B2C but also the B2B, will suffer more to adapt to this new context, okay? But I believe there will be a new generation of managers, a new generation open to these new technologies and helping these companies to evolve in this new market. Thank you, Ms. Agatha from Cook Islands, for sending your question. I have here a question from Mr. Gregorio José from Argentina. How that will impact on the global economy? Mr. Gregorio, I believe the global economy will be affected in different perspectives, in different ways. Considering the economic aggregates, what we'll be seeing probably will be a reduction of the leverage of the companies. The total cost of operation for several companies around the world will be reduced. It will release capitals to other initiatives, to other companies. So I'm an optimist about this. I understand that if the relation between companies and clients is easier, is lubricated by these new tools, probably the general economy will be positively impacted by these new tools. All right, Mr. Gregorio, thank you very much for sending your question. And I have here, there are several questions. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. We have also some videos sent to us. I have a question from India. Mr. Gauri Shankar from India asks, what is the dominating market strategy prevailing among the current business scenario, which usually brings about a huge change in the business world? If there is one, please specify. I believe we could say that being an ePlanet is a new competitive strategy, because you are using new tools to access clients, you are using new formats of business relations. But I believe we will see even more. I invite you, Mr. Gauri Shankar, to join us for the specific topic. Tomorrow's panel is about building new strategies for these companies, and we'll be going deep in this topic tomorrow, okay? Thank you very much for sending your question. From India, Mr. Gauri Shankar. As I was saying, I have a lot of questions here. I'm doing my best to approach as many as I can. Ms. Anna Daing from Papua New Guinea asks, why is Microsoft paying huge amount to this social media platform? Does this platform help the development of the business world? I think so, Ms. Anna. I think that accessing millions, or in this case, billions of users helps you not only to access them, but also to better understand their needs, understand their profiles. And I believe Microsoft will take advantage of it, and other companies will try to do the same pathway within the next years. Thank you, Ms. Anna Dang from Papua New Guinea, for sending your questions. I have also a question from Ms. Maria Griselda from Philippines. What are the impacts of these new companies to our lives, and what will be we will be benefited or jeopardized? Thank you for sending your question from Philippines, Ms. Maria Griselda. I believe everybody not will be affected. We are already affected. I believe you use a cell phone. You have lots of apps in your cell phone. You are buying, you are selling, you are getting in touch, you are accessing information, and all these news will bring us opportunities, and also it will be bringing some threats. On the side of advantage, it's easy to forecast. It's easy to understand that you'll be buying for cheaper products, all the services that you'll be using, but you'll be also facing some threats. Privacy is under threat around the world. We don't know how this information that social media is collecting will be used in the future. Will they use this through artificial intelligence programs to better understand us and to anticipate our moves? We don't know yet. Perhaps in the future the global society will be asked to discuss more seriously these issues and try to approach solutions for these threats. Thank you very much for your question, Ms. Maria Griselda. We also have some questions sent by video to us. What here we have some videos. Are they ready to run? I have a question from Mr. Gul Shaman. Thank you for sending your question. Please say your question, Mr.
Dear IBS International, my name is Gulchaman. My question is about how to deal in the situation when you are late to the work and your boss counts every minute, and so whether should I leave the job. My second question is about how to become a future leader of the company and not a follower.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gulchaman, for sending your question. I believe, although we have seen this new kind of company, these new planets emerging mainly in developed countries like the US or Europe, we are seeing also these new companies flourishing in emerging countries. In my perspective, of course, these new tools are good for companies from everywhere, but companies from emerging countries, like considering the lack of resource they have, they will take most advantage of these new opportunities because they will have less difficult to access resource, less difficult to access customers, and they will probably be, I would not say they will take most advantage of these new tools than the developed country companies, but they will certainly take advantage of these new tools because they lack resources that are more available for them from now on. Okay, Ms. Gulchaman, thank you for sending your question. I have also a question from Mr. Wahid. Thank you for sending your question. What is your thought, please?
Everyone, thank you for allowing me to ask some questions. I want to ask that nowadays the scenario is different. The conventional market are disappearing, and the social markets, the networked markets, social media, and development in technology is taking its place. So can it affect the common man? Can it affect the common markets, or can a common man take advantage of this change? This change? Thank you.
Mr. Wahid, thank you very much for sending your question. I believe companies are taking advantage of it, but is the common man taking advantage of this new scenario too? I think so. I think when we can buy for less, when we can easily access our friends, interact live with people like now, it's probably an advantage that common men are taking from this new context. But of course, I believe there will be threat, there will be discussions about the social and the political and legal issues regarding to this subject. And I invite you to join us in our last seminar, our last panel on this Thursday. On this Thursday, we will have the opportunity of discussing with specialists the social and legal issues, impacts of this new kind of company over the society. Okay, Mr. Wahid, thank you very much for sending your question. And I invite you to send more video questions for the following days. We will have the opportunity of transmitting your video live here and having a face-to-face contact with you all guys, all right? I have now a question from the United Kingdom. Ms. Fanvia Palha from the United Kingdom is asking, is social networking the key to all business now to see a trend change in profits? I'm not sure if it will be a trend for all companies, but for most of them, for sure. When you go, Ms. Fanvia, to the social media and you find your clients there, you see how they are thinking, how they are interacting. It brings companies an opportunity to anticipate their trends, to anticipate how they react to the new trends. All right? Thank you very much. I have also a question from Ms. Harriet Adong from Uganda. Thank you for participating in this seminar. It's a very long question. I will try to summarize here it for you. Just give me a second. Do you think this new format of company is the best way to promote business by abolishing the traditional ways of doing business, given the tax and digital challenges involved, especially in developing countries? I believe, Ms. Harriet from Uganda, thank you for sending your question. I believe new emerging countries will take benefit from it. But of course, as well in developed countries, governments and societies in general are discussing how to include this new format of companies in their societies, in their economy. Also, the emerging countries will struggle to find the best way to fit these companies in the economy. But if these companies are able to deliver value to the society as a whole, they will be finding ways to solve the issues companies like this will be bringing to them, all right? So I have several other questions. I will not be able to read all of them, but we have some questions that are arriving now in our chat on YouTube channel, and I will ask Mr. Julio to read some of them. We have just a few more minutes to run our Q&A session, our question and answer session here, okay?
Okay, we have received questions both from the WhatsApp and also from the chat. First, Ms. Raihana is asking, don't you think that the evolution of the planets beside its lots of goodness will be a big threat for world security? Electronic propaganda can even bring world war. ISIS using electronic as their main tools of propaganda.
For sure. What is the name of the person again?
Raihana.
Raihana, thank you for sending your question. I believe there are several threats. There is the threat for the privacy of people. It's a real threat because people have the right of having their personal life protected from threats like this. And we know once you start putting all your data in the systems, it's easier for someone to steal your data and use it against individuals and against the society as a whole. There is also the threat of this intense communication bring from the past old rivalries between countries, between cultures, and provoke new conflicts. But I believe the society will need to learn how to better use these new tools. You are using a cell phone connect to the internet. I'm using to billions of people are getting together using these new technologies. We gotta learn how to use it and promote peace and development in the world, not only in the developed countries, but mostly for emerging countries' economies. Okay? Thank you very much for sending your question. What is the next one, please, Mr. Julio?
Now, a question from Diane from Indonesia. Do we have to make a SWOT analysis for our business, although there is a platform, or using internet for our first marketing channel?
I believe all tools of strategies are still useful, still interesting, but there will be some adaptations to use these old techniques of making analysis in this new context. You know, we have been discussing this so far, and the idea is that companies in this new format create new ecosystems in which companies and consumers interact with each other in different ways. Probably all tools will be useful, but they will be needing some adaptations for better understanding the new process of delivering value in this new context. Okay, Ms. Diana from Indonesia, thank you very much for sending your question.
Now, Shumaila is asking, a hybrid car has more than 350 individual patents. How do you manage the licensing of each of these? When you are talking about the technology transfer, if you jump that hurdle, you still need to be in market and install the technology in a new market that lacks much of the skills, capital, and infrastructure the developed world takes for granted.
Well, Shumaila, thank you very much for sending your question. I believe the most important aspect here is that we need to share this knowledge. And it's easier now to share knowledge, to share resources around the world, developing new tools, new technologies. Like you have said, the example of the hybrid cars, we have lots of other opportunities open to us in this new context. The point is that will be these technologies effectively being used for promoting social and economical development in emerging countries, in the emerging world? It's a question that will be answered in the future. Through activities like this seminar we are offering for you today, the idea is offering opportunities for young managers from all over the world. You have observed that we are answering questions from Pakistan, India, Philippines. Most of these countries are emerging countries. And young managers like yourself are understanding the challenges of being running these new kind of companies, and probably in the future it will be an advantage for emerging countries' economies too. All right? Thank you very much, Shumaila, for sending your question. Please, Julio.
Just a second. Now, Junaid is asking, how can we enhance business from a single money or single thing? What are the main steps that we enhance our business in the world?
Well, Ms. Junaid, I invite you to join us for this panel on Wednesday. We will be discussing the entrepreneurial pathway for these companies, how these companies are innovating, how these companies are provoking disruptive changes in the not only technological side of this business, but also in the managerial side of this business. We'll be discussing how to enjoy these new opportunities for creating new kinds of value exchanges in the markets. So be my guest for this Wednesday debate, this Wednesday panel, and join us in this discussion through this week. All right, Ms. Junai, thank you very much for sending your question.
Now, Mojili Ram is asking, how can we develop a new technology in e-planets of India's business improvement?
Mr. Mojit Han, thank you for sending your questions. India is now a country that has all opportunities to develop this new kind of companies. In India, we have clusters of information technology. You have universities devoted to this. When I was seeing that statistics of the Center for Global Enterprise study that I showed you in the initial remarks of this debate, I was noticing that India had no company in this 176 rank that they created. But I'm sure that within the next few years, India will have lots of companies there. And of course, it will bring advantages for the companies themselves, but it will bring also advantages for the Indian economy. Okay, thank you very much, Mojit, for sending your question. Thank you very much.
Now, Isra Ahmed is asking, how can people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds benefit from these e-planets?
Mr. Isra, I believe, first of all, people from low-income families take advantage of this because it makes it easier for you to access information, to access products, to access people, to interact socially, like we are doing now. What we are doing is using these new technologies in favor to people to access high-level information about this subject for free, easy as turning on your computer. But of course, I believe in the future there will be a challenge for everybody. Those workers who are not used to these new technologies, they are not prepared for this, will face difficulty to enter the labor market. So it will be important that people start moving themselves towards a new level of knowledge in terms of preparation for the labor market. I know that universities, unfortunately, around the world, not only in emerging countries, but also in developed countries, universities are not preparing properly their students for these new challenges. But it's a matter of time. The market demands will be pushing universities and also works to better prepare themselves for these new opportunities and these new threats of this new economy. All right? Thank you very much for sending your question. And we are running out of time for new questions now. I will have time just to read one more question and finish this today's panel. Please, Mr. Julio.
Now, Ms. Magdalene de Shield is asking, what are the socio-economic benefits of any planet? What provokes the emergence of the planet around the world?
I believe the most important aspect, Ms. Magdalene, that offered the conditions for the rise of planets was the development of new technologies. I don't think that someone thought, I will create this technology to use it in our company. It was a almost random development, I believe. The use of cell phones, the connection of the cell phones to the internet, but companies suddenly realized that they had this new opportunity to put people together, to access consumers, to access suppliers, and put all of them in a large ecosystem in which they could interact. The general idea of having clusters, as Professor Carneiro was saying before in his remarks, these new technologies allows us to use this old concept of clusters in this new context.
That's right.
Before, we needed to access companies just they were in the same block, in the same neighborhood. Now we can organize a cluster, an instant cluster, just by accessing internet.
Exchange information, exchange knowledge,
Sharing resource.
sharing resources
All right.
in a low cost.
At a
That's
low
more
cost, immediately. So, with that, we conclude this Q&A session, this question and answer session. I appreciate very much your participation and invite you to join us tomorrow for the continuity of this discussion and a debate that can change your academic and professional life, opening new opportunities for you in this new global economic context. Good evening for you all and see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.